What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's some of my final thoughts ahead of today's Game Week 28 deadline. So I'm going to go through the latest team news information we've got at the time recording, go through benching headaches, answer a bunch of your questions, and take a quick look at my own team as well. So let's get into it. So not a huge amount of team news at the moment. As always, because it's a Friday deadline, I'm recording this on Thursday afternoon. So we will get more press conference updates on Friday. Anything major that's missed out in this video, I will cover in the deadline stream later today, which will start at 4:30 PM UK time. Not great news if you're a Mukiele or Brobby owner. They're going to be out for between 2 and 4 weeks. So they're definitely going to miss game week 28 and 29. So 28 is this weekend, 29 is the midweek straight away afterwards. It's worth saying that game week 30 is Brighton at home for Sunderland, and that's on the 14th of March. So it's just over 2 weeks away. So if they're going to be out for between 2 and 4 weeks, there is an outside chance they would be back for game week 30, but I would say it's unlikely. I wouldn't pin all my hopes on Mukiele being able to play Brighton at home. And then in the blank in 31, it's Newcastle away anyway, so it's not a great fixture. I would say for most people, those two players are probably going to be a sell. Reinildo is still out, and Xhaka is back in contention to start, just in case any of you kept hold of him in your teams. For Leeds, Goodmanson is available again after illness. That is quite interesting because from 29 onwards, pretty much for the rest of the season, Leeds fixtures are quite good. And I know right now, if everyone's buying a cheap defender, they're going for Hill from Bournemouth, and that makes a lot of sense, especially if you've still got your wild card left. But if you don't, and you need a new defender very soon, I quite like Goodmanson at 3.8. 29 onwards, fixtures quite good. So keep an eye on that one. And then Spurs, probably not of that much interest from an FPL point of view, but Porro and Dancer are available again, so that does strengthen their defence a little bit. Right now, you're probably not going to be looking at Spurs players regardless, but maybe in the coming weeks, if, let's say they look good against Fulham away, could you bring in a Spurs player for Palace at home in 29, Forest at home in 31? Maybe, but I don't think Porro and Dancer are going to be top of people's list, but I thought I would include that anyway. That's all we got for now, and not all of that really is relevant to FPL, but there will be more on Friday morning and afternoon. So like I said, I'll cover that on the deadline stream if there's anything major, including Wirtz. I haven't got an update about him yet, so I'm not sure what to make of that. But again, deadline stream later today. So let's go through some benching headaches. Right at the top of the list, I've gone for Rayan from Bournemouth against Sunderland at home. I think if you've gone for him, there's no way you can bench him this week. And then I've gone for Sarr against Man United away, just behind him. You could argue that Sarr being on penalties should be higher than Rayan, but it's not a guarantee Sarr is on penalties, and Man United away is not a great fixture. Sunderland at home is definitely better. Then Rodgers against Wolves away. Then Cunha against Palace at home. Now, Cunha, out of all the names on this list, was the one that I moved around the most. Because in game week 27, that was the first time he's played 90 minutes under Carrick. In all the other games, he's got subbed early, or obviously been benched when Dorgu was fit. So I'm never quite sure week to week what to make of his minutes. Like, Šeško keeps playing so well off the bench, you'd almost think he's due a start. Now, if that happens, presumably Mbeumo will go to right wing, Cunha will play on the left, and Ahmad will come out of the team. He was the one subbed early in the last game, but it's not a guarantee. It's also not a guarantee Šeško starts, no matter how well he does off the bench. So I've put Cunha in 4th spot because I think he will start, and I think he'll get at least 75 minutes, but there is some risk there. If you wanted to put Rice ahead of him, and then the likes of Gabriel, Van Dijk, I think that's fine. But I think Cunha will start, so I've put him in 4th place. Then Rice. Again, you could argue Rice should be below some of these defenders, but I think he's quite a good pick this week. It feels almost inevitable he's going to get DEFCONs. Then you're just hoping for an attacking return on top. Then Gabriel, still the king of the defenders for me. Then Van Dijk, then Senesi, then Hill. So I've seen a few people ask whether they should play Bournemouth defenders ahead of Van Dijk or Gabriel. Not for me. They're very good this week, but they're not that good, in my opinion. They're still quite high up the list, though. Then Chow against Everton at home. Then Dalot against Palace at home. Then Gay against Leeds at home. The reason that I've gone for Dalot ahead of Gay is just because he does get forward quite a lot. And he does, he's not necessarily great when it comes to that final shot or that final pass, but he does find himself in some good positions. And Gay has picked up DEFCONs twice since he joined Man City, but I don't expect him to get them as often as he did at Palace. So that's why I've gone for Dalot ahead. And then just behind Gay, it's Maguire. Maguire below Dalot and Gay just because he's not great for defcons. And yes, he's got a bit of attacking threat from set pieces. I just think Dalot's open play threat is a bit better. Then Joachim Andersen, then Elliot Anderson, then Cash against Wolves away, then Munoz against Man United away. Munoz is a really interesting... I don't think it's a great chance of a clean sheet for Palace this week. But if you think back to what Munoz has done in the past, there would have been a stage in FPL, like this season earlier on, or maybe in previous seasons, where you'd never even think about benching him. You'd have him in like the top 5 or something. But the way it's going at the moment, I think it's fair to put him that low down. And then if you've got Enzo Fernandez, he's right at the bottom of the list for me. There's so many better players this week. So let's get into some of your questions. If money was no object, would you go for Dango, Utara or Schade? Once you take price out of the equation, these two are so similar. So Dango, 0.44 expected goal involvement per 90 minutes so far this season. Schade, 0.45. Now, Schade's goal threat is ever so slightly higher, but there's almost nothing in it. And then you look at their average minutes per start, Dango 83, Schade 82. Like, it's really difficult to split the two. If the minutes for both players was guaranteed from now until 31 and they were going to play the same minutes, I would go for Schade for 2 reasons. 1, he's slightly more differential. And 2, that goal threat is being ever so slightly higher, like I just said. But like, it is minimal. It's almost not worth talking about, to be honest. But there are the reasons why I would go for Schade if the minutes were the same. Will the minutes be the same? That's difficult to know. Because in the last game, Utara started and Schade didn't. Now, my guess is Schade will come back into the team against Burnley. And as long as he plays well, he will continue to start. But the safer pick is probably Utara. And also, even if you can't see a use for the money right now, maybe in a few weeks' time, you need that extra million. So I think the safe pick for most people is probably Utara. But personally, I really am looking at Schade because he's slightly more of a differential. It's really difficult to split the two. Whichever one you go for, they're a good pick. And there really is hardly anything in it. So if you've got a gut instinct one way or the other, just go for it. So this is a good follow-up question. Is it viable to go without any Brentford attacker? So not just Utara and Schade, but also Thiago? And the simple answer is yes. None of these players are essential. And for your team, it might not make any sense to bring them in. If you look at my team, for example, I've already got Thiago in place. But let's say that was Ekitike. I don't think there's a massive need to do Ekitike to Thiago. Now, you can look at my midfield of Rice, Fernandez, Mbeumo and Anderson and say that Utara or Schade would be an upgrade for Rice or Anderson, but not necessarily in a massive way. Yes, I'd probably rather have the Brentford attackers against Burnley, but I don't know if they are huge upgrades versus who I have. So in some cases, you might favour rolling the transfer, getting more information and making a decision closer to game week 31. It's absolutely viable to go without them. Obviously, if you're looking for a new midfielder or a new forward, they do have nice fixtures. They do play in game week 31. If you've already used a wild card, they've got good fixtures after 31 as well. So there's every reason to consider them, but let's not start pretending they're essential. So what do you think about going for Haaland and Salah if you can get to it without hits? And I'm going to assume that you've already got Haaland and it's Salah that you're looking to bring in. This is one of those moves that I'm never going to hate. Ultimately, you've got a player that we know in the past at least, not necessarily recently, has been great. The fixtures are good. His minutes look pretty decent, although the 76-minute sub against Forest last week hasn't helped my confidence in that. But generally, the minutes have been good this season. And he's a big differential. So I think if you want to go for Salah and you can get there without hits, I don't hate it. I know a lot of people will say he's not done anything recently, barely scored any goals, only one double-digit haul this season. That is all correct. But if you want to play it a little bit different, that's absolutely fine. I would say, though, because of the blank in 31, because you might want to have a couple of transfers after wildcard, etc., I wouldn't want to be spending too many transfers to get to Salah. And I probably wouldn't want to be selling too many players with a fixture in 31. It's not to say you can't do it, but I would just be careful about how many moves it takes you to get Salah. Like if you're sat there with Cole Palmer, for example, and you can get to Salah in 1 or 2 moves, why not if the rest of the team is looking okay? There's lots of good cheap midfielders at the moment. You don't necessarily need lots of £8-9 million attackers in your squad. If I look at my team just quickly as an example, I've not actually considered how I would even get to Salah, but I guess I would have to start from in Burmo, and then probably sell Rice to someone cheap like Dango Utara, and I've still got to make up 2.4 million. So even if I did Munoz to Hill, I'm still trying to find like 0.7. So I guess that would be Enzo down to Wilson, right? So let's say for my team, I could do Munoz, Burmo, Rice, and Enzo Fernandez out for free to get Salah, and I would get Hill, Wilson, Salah, and Utara. Is that worth 4 free transfers? Bearing in mind Enzo, Anderson, and Burmo all playing game week 31, probably not. I mean, don't get me wrong, Hill, Wilson, and Dango are all good options, so it's not terrible. But I'm not convinced I would want to spend 4 transfers to get there. For your team, it might require less changes. So it's really going to depend. So ultimately, I'm never going to hate people bringing in Salah against West Ham at home, Wolves away, Spurs at home. But I wouldn't want to be making too many moves to get to it, given what he's done recently. Like, his numbers are still not bad this season, 0.49 expected goal involvement per 90. But that's way down on what we've come to expect from him. So he's not really delivering for a £14 million player. So if you can get to him without massive detriment to the rest of your team, why not? But everyone else, I'd probably just ignore him. So I've got a couple of questions on Timber to Van Dijk. So is Timber to Van Dijk a no-brainer? And would you do Timber to Van Dijk for a hit? So on the hit, no, not for me. I know Van Dijk is looking better, but I don't think he's 4 points better this week. And I know some people will argue that over the next 4 game weeks, when you factor in that Van Dijk is playing in game week 31, he'll repay that -4. That may or may not be true, but you can just make the move next week for free. So don't do it this week, do it in game week 29 instead. You still get Van Dijk for 3 of the next 4 game weeks, and you've not spent 4 points for the privilege. And I think Timber is fine this week, to be honest with you. Is Timber to Van Dijk a no-brainer? I'm not sure that's how I would word it, because that almost makes it sound like you should do it no matter what. But it is a pretty good transfer, I would say. And Arsenal, by the way, will play on Sunday against Chelsea, then Wednesday against Brighton. So my prediction will be that Timber starts both of those games, as he always does. But I guess there will be some risk there. So if you've got a spare transfer, no other major issues to worry about, I probably would do Timber to Van Dijk. So what should we do with Ollie Watkins? Would you keep or sell to someone like Thiago? This is a really tricky question, because ultimately Villa have got West Ham at home in game week 31. So not only do they have a fixture in the blank, it's a really good one. So to sit here and tell people to sell a player like Watkins, it doesn't feel right. But it is Chelsea at home in 29 and Man United away in 30. And Tammy Abraham has joined the squad. So there is a bit more competition for that number 9 spot. Now, so far, that hasn't really affected Watkins. If you look at his last 3 games, 90, 73 and 85. The game before that against Brentford, he was injured. So that's why he missed out. The time where it might become an issue is around game week 30. So when they play Man United, they've got first leg of the Europa League last 16 before that Man United game. So in between Chelsea and Man United. And then the second leg is between Man United and West Ham in game week 31. So could there be some rotation for Watkins? Potentially. Does that rotation come in Europe? Does it come in the Premier League? I'm not sure. Does he keep starting but getting subbed earlier? Potentially. I think my general view on selling him is, if you've got no other issues and you're looking at your team thinking I can get through game week 31 with minimal transfers, then I think maybe I would sell him to someone like Thiago, who's absolutely nailed for minutes and on penalties and has good fixtures. But if you're already struggling to put out a team for 31, you've got other stuff to deal with, I think it's hard to justify selling Watkins. I'm not saying you can't sell a player right now that's got a fixture in 31, because I might sell one this week. But also I might get to 31 needing 1 transfer and have 3. So I'm in quite a good position unless I get a ton of injuries all of a sudden. So it's really going to depend on what the rest of the state of your squad is in. Ultimately, Watkins is not someone to panic about, I would say. It's more of a luxury move. And if you've got that luxury, go for it. I would rather have Thiago over the next 4 weeks, but it's not a no-brainer move or anything like that. So would you sell Munoz or Timber for Van Dijk, or neither? I think I would sell one of them. If I've got the spare transfer, the rest of the team is looking good, because Van Dijk's one of, if not the best defender to go for from now until game week 31. And also, by the way, if you've already used your wild card, Liverpool's fixtures are quite good after 31 as well. So 32 is Fulham at home, then it's Everton away in 33 and Palace at home in 34. And if Liverpool get to an FA Cup semi-final, they could potentially double in game week 33 as well. Now, if they do double, that means they're probably blanking in 34, but the run from now until 33 looks good. So I think if I've got the luxury to make a move to get Van Dijk, I probably would do that. Which of these two would I sell? I was about to say Munoz, then I hesitated based on what I said earlier about Arsenal having a Sunday, Wednesday turnaround. Could Timber finally get a rest? My prediction is always going to be that Timber starts, but maybe that rest is coming soon. Whereas with Munoz, you know he's just going to get played unless he's got an injury. But on the other hand, yes, Munoz is more attacking, but the bread and butter for a defender is clean sheets, and I just back Arsenal more over the next 3 weeks. I don't see Palace getting one against Man United away, and probably not even against Spurs away. And then Leeds at home is not bad, but Leeds will always give you a game, and Crystal Palace are not in a great place right now. I think I've got to stick to my belief about Arsenal being the best defence in the league and say that between these two, I would probably keep Timber. Like, for what it's worth, I've got Munoz in my squad. I'm benching him this week, and I may well bench him in 29 as well. I'm only really holding him for that Leeds fixture because I've got the luxury to do it. Like, if I had problems in my defence, I'd probably just sell Munoz. Ultimately, they're both blanking in 31, so there's not like a huge upside to one over the other. But I think I'd have to keep Timber, mostly because of the Arsenal defence thing. But it's close. If you want to go the other way, it's fine. So speaking of the Arsenal defence, is triple Arsenal defence still a good option? That depends who you don't own. I think my general view of the Arsenal defence right now is I would only sell them if I'm desperate for the money to make another move or if I'm buying Van Dijk. Like Joachim Anderson, James Hill, they're cheap defenders that people are looking to bring in. They're absolutely fine, but I don't think they're better than Arsenal defenders. So it's more about who you want to get rather than whether Arsenal are a massive problem. I think ultimately a lot of people have not tripled up on a defence before, and because it's not gone well, they want to get rid of it straight away. But Arsenal defenders individually are still really good. Like, take a look at my team, for example. Let's just say I had Schade instead of Rice, and I had Timber instead of Munoz. Because I've already got Van Dijk in my squad, I wouldn't see a massive need to sell any of my Arsenal defence, Raya, Gabriel, or Timber, because I've got no need to move to another defender. So it's going to depend on your individual circumstances. So I think triple defence is still absolutely fine for the next 3 weeks. But if you've got the luxury to buy Van Dijk, I would do it. And if you need the money for another move, I'd also consider it. But I would not sell Gabriel. I just cannot see a reason to do that. And with Raya, I'd be less keen on it too because he's a goalkeeper and the upside is just not there to make goalkeeper transfers generally. So when will we know whether Man City versus Crystal Palace will go back into game week 31? So for anyone that doesn't know, because of the Carabao Cup final, Man City and Palace has been postponed in game week 31 and the Premier League have to put it somewhere else. We don't yet know where that will be, but it is possible that it just goes back into game week 31. Now, one scenario where that could happen is if Newcastle beat Man City in the FA Cup. If they do that, Man City and Palace will both be out of the FA Cup. And then when there's FA Cup weekend, before game week 32, Man City and Palace could be arranged then. Now, generally, at the moment, they try and not have Premier League games on the same weekend as FA Cup, especially when that weekend has been reserved for FA Cup, but it could still happen. So the next round of the FA Cup is after game week 29. So the earliest you're going to find out whether it's going back into 31 is before game week 30. But a couple of things to say. Man City losing to Newcastle in the FA Cup 5th round does not guarantee this fixture goes back into 31. And it also wouldn't guarantee that you'd find out before game week 30. Because the gap between 31 and 32 is huge. We've got an international break, then FA Cup weekend. So they wouldn't necessarily have to announce it miles before game week 31. The other scenario where this potentially could go back into 31 is if Man City and Palace are both out of Europe after the last 16, so Champions League and then Europa Conference League. That seems quite unlikely, but obviously it's a possibility. But for that to happen, you'd have to wait until the last 16 matches have been played. So at the moment, the earliest, I believe, if I'm correct, is before game week 30. But if Man City beat Newcastle in the FA Cup, then it can't go on FA Cup weekend because Man City would still be in the competition. So we're just going to have to wait and see. All I will say is, as it stands, I would base most of your decisions around the fact that that will be a blank in 31 for Man City and Palace players. But if you've already got City players or Palace players and you don't want to let go of them just yet, try and put the decision off as long as possible. I just wouldn't probably bring them in. Like for people that want Nico O'Reilly, I would bring him in knowing that he's going to blank in 31. I wouldn't do it thinking the fixture's going to go back in so he'll be good. It could go back in. The likelihood is that that doesn't happen. So it's possible, but not guaranteed. So base most of your decisions on the fact that it's going to be a blank. And then if you've got City and Palace players and it ends up going back in, that's just a bonus. So I'm just going to run through some final thoughts for my own team as we head towards the deadline later on today. I've got 2 free transfers and 1.4 million in the bank, and the team looks pretty good. So Raya and Gabriel double up on Arsenal defence. Van Dijk, Joachim Andersen and Senesi make up my back 4. The midfield is Rice, Bruno Fernandes, Mbeumo and Elliot Anderson, and then Thiago and Haaland up front. So a lot of the popular players that people are bringing in this week, like Thiago, like Van Dijk, I've already got in place. And it's Munoz, Enzo Fernandez and Guiu on my bench. And obviously Dubravka as well. But I'm almost always going to play Raya ahead of Dubravka. So basically, as I said in team selection yesterday, the options are roll. And I do think this team looks pretty good. I think roll is fully justifiable. That will give me 3 transfers next week and leave me in a really strong position as we get closer to game week 31. Or, and this is probably currently my favourite option, is to sell Elliot Anderson. Even though he's been so consistent with defensive contributions like those 4 and 5 pointers, could I bring someone in who could get me bigger points over the next few weeks? Potentially. So Elliot Anderson to Wilson or Dango. Now, I know I said earlier on in the video that I kind of prefer Schade because he's a bit more differential. I don't have the money to do Elliot Anderson straight to Schade. The only way to get him is to sell Rice instead. Now, arguably, the better decision here would be to sell Rice. If I'm only going to make one move, sell Rice instead of Anderson or Enzo, because I know for certain that Rice is going to blank in game week 31. But I actually think Rice is okay over the next 3 weeks. Like, he's pretty consistent in terms of ticking over with points, and I'm not really in a rush to sell. So I think my preference right now is to do Elliot Anderson to one of Wilson or Dango. If I want to get greedy, I could do both. So Rice and Anderson to 2 of Dango, Schade and Wilson, and just go all in right now, and then roll in game week 29. So when I get to game week 30, I'm back up to 2. And like, even if I picked up an injury or 2 in game week 28, it probably wouldn't be that bad. Like, even, I mean, if it was someone like Fernandes or Haaland, that wouldn't be great because I'd only have 1 transfer in 29. So I could make the 2. I don't think I'm going to make 2. I just think this team looks pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's absolutely fine. And usually that's more than enough. So Anderson to Dango or Wilson or roll is my probable option. But obviously I'll wait and see for, or wait to hear from all the managers on Friday for their press conferences, and then make a decision ahead of today. Make a decision ahead of today's deadline. Let's see what I end up with. Join me on the deadline stream later on today. It's 4:30 p.m. UK time that's going to start. If you found that video useful or you liked it or whatever, I've lost my train of thought and I can't speak. Give it a like and hit that subscribe, or just don't, because this was rubbish and what a terrible ending to the video. It's completely up to you. Either way, I'll be streaming later on, 4:30 p.m. UK time. I'll catch you then. Good luck this week.